Good night, Belizeans at home and abroad. This is the Belizeans Affair Show number 380. 380. My name is Leonard Brackett. I'll be your chairman for tonight. And being Friday, we will continue dealing with some of the constitutional and legal and case law issues that relates to our country and some of the political affairs of our country as well. Um, as normal, we do our prayer first, which is I'm going to indulge in that currently, and thereafter I'll do a short reading from the scriptures. So I'll go ahead and bow my head. Divine loving Father, thou art my creator, thou art the creator of heaven and earth and all that in them are. Into thy hands we commend ourselves, asking that thou would continue to accept our expression of gratitude and thankfulness to you for having given us the privilege of life in the first place, and secondly, for the opportunities to still be alive among our family members, friends, and loved ones. We pray that thou must continue to bless our country of Belize, its people and leadership, that thou would continue to bless the United States, this country of the United States, its people and leadership, as well as the rest of humanity. Please continue to bless our children, grandchildren, great grandchildren, those of us who have. And please continue to bless our extended family members. Please continue to bless our brothers, sisters, cousins, uncles, aunts, and other significant ones. And we pray as well, loving Father, that thou would bless this program, that whatever we have to offer tonight, may we stay within the bounds of reasonableness and offer a program that is worthy of other people's time. We pray that thou mayest continue to bless and provide for the rest of humanity, especially those people who are in war zones, others who are being killed sometimes for no justifiable reason, others who are losing their limbs and their livelihood. We pray that thou must have mercy upon them as well, Lord Father. For us his mercies in Jesus' name. Amen. I'll just go ahead and retrieve my Bible here and just randomly open the Bible and see what we got here. We came up on Matthew. Let's see. We'll try Matthew chapter 5, which is the part that I came up on. Like I said, I was just going to open and come up on something at random, and then we'll read some of that and do a little expounding, not too long. So here we go. Matthew chapter 5, and starting at verse 1. And it reads as follows. And seeing the multitude, he, Jesus, went up into the mountain. And when he was set, his disciples came unto him. And he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for there is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. And I'll leave it at that. It's quite a few more verses that I read up to verse 10. And this particular chapter goes, let me see, just a minute. I'm just trying to find it. It goes up to verse number 48. And within those verse 1 through 48, there's a context there. And all I'll do in terms of expounding on that is to say, at the time when Jesus was alleged to have been on the face of the earth and doing his ministry, he was attempting to bring solace to the majority of the people who were less fortunate, who were not rich, and who in those olden days had to be scratching out a living, the best way they knew how. In Belize, we have a similar type situation these many thousands of years after, and that is to say, we have a country of 60-something% poverty, which is quite regrettable, by the way, because better could have been had or could have been done, but for the lack of proper governance. And I'll segue from that thought. And since we're dealing with constitutional matters tonight, as I previously indicated, I'd like to continue the challenge that we have taken up to deal with the recommendations made by the PCC to the Prime Minister for them to use as a base to alter or eviscerate the Constitution. And we've been dealing with that subject matter for quite a while. It takes a lot of time to go through all 100 and odd various recommendations and compare them to what the current Constitution says about those particular recommendations. And without elaborating any further or just verbalizing any further in terms of commentary, I'll just like to take the next part, recommendation. Well, before I go there, I was about to take the next recommendation in line in terms of the last ones that were done, but I want to just refresh on the last ones that we did so that we can contextualize that input. And I'm not going to go over the whole presentation from the last time we, I think it was Wednesday, the last time we dealt with this matter, because it's a substantive amount of reading, and I think I bored quite a few people back then. And for those who are really seriously interested in these matters, I think maybe, at least as far as I've heard from one particular person, which commended the effort and said that they appreciated the intent and the effort. And I'm quite sure there are many others, who are of that same vein of thought. And therefore, while I'm reaching some people, there are many others who are not being reached. And maybe we don't know for tonight if we're going to have some new visitors to the site who may not have heard last week's or last Wednesday's presentation. So I'll just do a quick synopsis of what we dealt with last Wednesday and then go into the program proper for tonight. Last Wednesday we dealt with the executive. And let me just turn this thing sideways here for better reading. Yeah, I think it looked a little better like that. Okay. We read part 5 of the Constitution of Belize, which had as a main heading the executive. And we also, under that part 5 of the recommendations that the PCC made, we dealt with recommendation number 63, that is to establish the establishment of the executive authority. And I recall mentioning back then at that time that there's no reason for them to presume or assume or intimate that the PCC is now making a recommendation to establish or for the establishment of the executive authority, when in fact that's already written in our current constitution. So if they were not onerous, they would have probably left that there as it were, and not pretend like they are just now coming around to recognizing that that needs to be included, because the executive of the country is already established, and the uh, executive authority is vested, as we read, in the head of state. So that's nothing new to us. But what's new, or what will become new to us, is what they're attempting to do. That is to vest that authority in themselves. How they're going to go about getting that done, I'm not too sure, because they have not shown their hands so far in terms of any legal, constitutional, or lawful process that they will undertake in order to achieve that objective. And I'm not about to volunteer any advice in that regards, or for that matter of fact, to assist them in the committing of treason to our country or sedition, because I don't think it's time for us to go down that particular street. The world as it is right now have a lot of craziness going on. A lot of wars and rumors of wars. And we have countries giving up their independence, and other countries are trying to pretend that their independence, by virtue of just being declared to be independent, is good enough for them to be able to survive in the neighborhood. And that's not necessarily true either, especially in the light of geopolitical affairs. But I'll proceed to read a little more, because I want to get this preface done quickly so I can deal with the deal with the substantive issues of tonight. Under recommendation number 63, subsection 1, they're saying to repeal section 36, 1 of the Constitution as it currently constitutes in the Constitution of Belize, and change the wording from the executive authority of Belize is then vested in the Prime Minister. Now, by then just declaring that, apparently they have the impression that it's going to be like that, or that's the way it's going to be because they declare it to be. Now, I think we have dealt with this subject matter quite a bit before, and so most people who would be hearing me now retort again about this matter would realize that I don't consider these gentlemen to be smart enough to get what they're trying to tell us that they're doing done. That is that they're going to go ahead and write in the amend the Constitution and write in a little simidimi bunch of words there to replace the existing Constitution, so that it will say that authority, they are deeming it vested in the Prime Minister. And as I clarified and explained in our last presentation, there are process, procedures, protocols, and practices that should be able to, or enable them to achieve that objective if they wish to go about it the correct way. But because of the bastardized way that they're trying to go about it, that is to bastardize our Constitution and pretending that after that bastardized Constitution is put in place, that bastardized Constitution will then enable them or grant them the powers that they think that they should have. And I beg to differ, and have explained many a times and will continue to explain why is it that they are falling short, they are falling on their faces, while they are trying to bamboozle us into believing that their attempts will have success the way they're doing it. But let's move on. So under section 36, 2, subsection 2, it says, and replaced with subject to the provisions of this Constitution, the executive authority of Belize may be exercised on behalf of the people of Belize, either directly or through the Prime Minister or Deputy Prime Minister, ministers, deputy ministers, or officers subordinate to the Prime Minister. Now, the executive authority is not vested in the Prime Minister. So they first have to figure out how they're going to get that authority vested in the Prime Minister. But currently, with the ascension of the Governor General on behalf of the head of state, who holds that power, by the way, the current Prime Ministers and ministers and other executive members can exercise some executive powers with the ascension of the head of state and indirectly through the Governor General. But they don't want to deal with that. They want to make that history. They want to make that go away. In other words, a child will pretend that they have no parent and they have no need for any parent. Therefore, they'll ignore the reality that parents do exist, and without parents, they would not have been here, because they feel like they're here now, and therefore, being here, they don't have no need for parents. That is why some children put their parents in old folks' home to languish and die, and they're overweight. They have no need or use for them. Anyhow, I'm getting a little extraneous because I said I wasn't going to get into reading all this stuff. I just made a few comments, and I want to go to the. I want to show how that those comments and what we had spoken about last session, because I consider these to be like some teachable moments. Okay. And I'm having a bit of Facebook issues here while I'm presenting the program. A lot of stuff is coming on the phone and blocking off what I'm supposed to be able to read. Okay. Where is it? Just give me a second, please. Okay, here we go. Recommendation number 64. Based on recommendation number 64, it says, establish the direct election of the Prime Minister. And under 64.1, they are proposing that the Prime Minister shall be elected by direct vote every 4 years on the same date, the last Wednesday of November, and he or she, as Prime Minister, would assume office on January 2nd of the subsequent year. Now, for those who wants to have a direct election of our Prime Minister, that shouldn't be a problem, including myself. Not that I'm gung-ho about that, especially based on the bunch of knuckleheads and kleptocrats and vampires and evil-minded people that we have currently as the pool of individuals to select from. I don't think we can trust them with that level of power, as much as we like maybe to have that scenario occur, because were they to be entrusted with that level of power, how much better are they going to govern us compared to how they are governing us today? When that level of power leaves all accountability and all authority in their hands. No checks and balances. And you'll see why I'm saying that. Okay, let me go on. Under subsection 2 of recommendation 64, they're also saying the executive branch shall include the following functions and powers. Remember now that one last word that I use, powers, is really what the whole of this shenanigan, you know, is all about. Okay? It's all about powers. First of all, them being able to snatch out of the head of state's hands the power and authority of governance so that they can end up doing whatever kind of governance they want without the need for ascension and or any authority above them. And that is including the authority of the people, because remember, the people have authority above the politicians. Or modern day politicians don't behave as if that's the case, only when they want to go and get your vote. Then they pretend like, oh, they're coming so humble and they're so contrite and they're so nice and, all these good thoughts and good, fancy words. And, they come on their bending knees sometimes, Well, let me leave that part alone. I don't want to get too gratuitous. I want to deal with the subject matter as effectively as I can in terms of this particular presentation for tonight. Every once in a while, I get sidetracked, because I get emotional and I'm frustrated to know that we're dealing with grown-up, hardback people who are capable of knowing better and they pretend like they don't, and like they are doing the best that they can, and we're supposed to be just as well satisfied with that. But as I said, I don't want to keep distracting, so let me proceed further. The powers that they're talking about, as particularly in regards to paragraph A of this same section, subsection 2, section 64, subsection 2, reads as follows. The Prime Minister acts as the head of state. I don't know that any Prime Minister is one and the same as the head of state. But they're so drunk with power that they can't even express themselves adequately enough, clear-minded enough, honestly enough, forthrightly enough, that they have to conflate and play the fool like they don't know what words applies to what level of capability, authority, or power. But they want to grab the powers, by the way. So let me read on. The Prime Minister acts as the head of state and the commander-in-chief of all the armed forces, whose officers he shall commission. Now remember, by the time we finish reading all of these things, we're going to realize what I tell you for a long time ago, right? That is that we're dealing with people who are hell-bent in turning our country from a democratic process into a Republican type system, but even much worse, that is to say, an authoritarian system. Okay? Just listen to the words and digest them. Figure them out, or if you need to go to a dictionary, to find the meaning of some of these words, feel free. The Prime Minister acts as the head of state and the commander-in-chief of all the armed forces, whose officers he shall commission. He is responsible for implementing and enforcing the laws passed by the National Assembly before the execution of his office. He shall take the following oath or affirmation as prescribed by Schedule X. Open quotation is as regards to what the oath will read then. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of the Prime Minister of Belize and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend Belize and the Constitution of Belize. They are promising to do that. Right now, they are commanded to do that, but they don't want to follow the commands. They want to bamboozle us into having us believe that, oh, they are offering to be so nice, to be so good. Listen to all the promises that they are making. And, by the way, go along with those promises because that's how they want it to be done in order to cover up their ultimate objective. That is to say, when they accrue unto themselves these powers, they will then determine on your behalf what is or isn't, what's right, what's wrong, what your new constitution will be, and how often they will modify or overthrow those constitutions. Because believe me, I'm telling you, once they go down the road of eviscerating the present constitution to make it into a more pliable document, so that they can do some of the things that they have always been saying that they want to do, but the present constitution is constraining them. That's why they want to get rid of it. When they get rid of it, then you're going to know how barley grow. Anyhow, I'll go on to read. That was paragraph B. Paragraph A, I'll read paragraph B. The Prime Minister shall nominate, subject to the approval of the Senate by simple majority, all ministers, attorney generals, deputy ministers, chairmen of government statutory bodies. By the way, that is being done right now, okay? So don't let nobody fool you into believing that this is something new that they are proposing in order to give us better governance. They have all these powers now vested in them, and they have the same scenarios going on, and they're not giving us what we're supposed to get. So they're not short of these things in order for them to give us the good governance. So how are we supposed to believe that they're going to give us good governance after they get these things? They already have those. Presently, the Prime Minister appoints his cabinet members. He appoints all the people from all the different statutory boards then. He appoints all the... Let me just read on, okay? As a matter of fact, I'll start reading this all over again so it makes the proper sense. The Prime Minister shall nominate, subject to the approval of the Senate, by simple majority vote, which they presently they will have 6 government senates, 6 out of 12, and all they need to get is 1 extra. Okay, either the business senator or the NGO senators or the church senator, or But for all intents and purposes, with a simple majority, the Prime Minister can do all these things. All ministers, attorney general, deputy ministers, chairman of government statutory boards, chairman of commissions, heads of departments, governor of the central bank, judges, magistrates, ambassadors, and other officials who are vetted and approved by the ministry. Now, for example, the slide is one in here about the Prime Minister shall appoint judges and magistrates. That's the purview of the Supreme Court. That's the purview of another branch of government. The Prime Minister, according to this recommendation here, is assuming all the powers of all the 3 branches of government. You call that a dictator, autocracy. The system that we currently have under the present constitution is that you have 3 branches of government: an executive branch, to which the Prime Minister belongs and is subservient to the Governor General and the head of state. Now the Prime Minister wants to take up not only just the powers of those above him, but he wants to also control the powers of all of those below him. That's what autocracy is all about. And he wants to decide who the judges are, who the magistrates are, and other officials who are vetted and approved by the majority in the Senate of the National Assembly. No person appointed by the Prime Minister shall be a member of the National Assembly. So that's a contravention or a contradiction. In that one paragraph there, they're saying that the Prime Minister will have the authority to appoint all those officers of the government. And then now at the end of that very same, they're saying that the Prime Minister will not appoint nobody from the National Assembly. How do we get our current members of cabinet? From the National Assembly. The people that win the general election. The Prime Minister who has the majority, or the person who has the majority, picks members to be his cabinet. And he has other members that are not elected officials to be his cabinet. So how are you going to say that the Prime Minister is going to be the head of state, have all the powers to appoint unto himself and accrue unto himself all the powers and authority of government, and appoint all the other ministers as we currently do? But then none of those ministers then apparently will be coming from the House of Representatives. That's how they get their cabinet made. It's not impossible to have a cabinet of all non-House of Representative members, you know? But that means that you're going to have all backbenchers. In fact, how you going to have a cabinet, the ministers then, if they are not members of the House, how are they going to function in the House? How are they going to answer to questions from the other side of the House when the opposition asks questions in regards to different ministerial portfolios, as is currently the case? Where are they going to be sitting, and how are they going to be interacting with the House? If they don't presently, if they are not doing or going to be members of the House, or if the Prime Minister is not going to appoint any members of the House to be members of cabinet or members of the ministries, they're double talking. They're conflating, and for all intents, they're conniving, they're bamboozling, and I would say, to make it worse, they're actually lying. Maybe unintentionally, because they don't probably realize that they're, making these kind of, petty mistakes. There's enough ink on paper for them to clarify what is it that they're trying to say. You don't have to lie on yourself, but that's what happened to them. They lie on themselves. That is that they say one thing but mean something else, and they're constantly being caught. And they get offended when you point out to them the errors of their ways. If you have evil and devious intentions and you start from a point of deviancy, you'll end up with devious end results. But let's proceed. Give them the benefit of the doubt that the last part that I read was not part of the same paragraph, all under paragraph B. Not even a couple of hundred words, okay? Let's go to paragraph C. The Prime Minister shall receive heads of state, ambassadors, which is what currently the Governor General does, right? The Governor, currently the ambassadors from other foreign countries go and present their credentials to the Governor General. That's going to be the purview of the Prime Minister, because there shall be no Governor General. Remember what we dealt with last session about eviscerating the position of the Governor General, and those powers are somehow by osmosis or some kind of, let me not get funny. It's a serious subject. Somehow or another, they will acquire those powers unto themselves. Okay? So the Prime Minister will have all those powers vested in him, and he'll decide on his own what is the law of the land at any given time, or what isn't the law of the land at any given time, or how he wants to run things. Because he is going to be the dictator there. I'll proceed to read further on that same paragraph C, okay, because there's a little bit more to go. The Prime Minister shall receive heads of state, ambassadors, and other public ministers, and he shall have power. Remember that word, power, that I told you about? You're going to see it appearing over and over. Not necessarily as a word, but in the intent, actions, and the moralities of operating. It's all about power, subject to the approval of the Senate to make treaties, covenants which currently exist, conventions, agreements, protocols, regional and international organizations provide 2/3 of the Senate President concur and approve such agreements. All these things are currently under the powers of the President of the Senate. The people that helped put this recommendation together, is it that we are to presume that they did not realize that this exists in our current constitution? Why is it that they're pretending to just include it now? All they have to do is just, like they have done in other parts, excise the whole thing, or say that to keep that part, unborrowed, or without having to, deal with that part, right? They pass over that part and leave that part alone. They don't want to deal with that because there's no need for them to rewrite and re-say the same thing that's already there, as if it's just being proposed by them. Nevertheless, let's go on to paragraph D. I'm reading these things because I need for you, the general public, at home and abroad, to be aware of what is it that these people are proposing, and whether or not what they're proposing is going to impact the current constitution, and to what degree. The office of the Prime Minister shall consist of his Chief of Staff, the immediate staff, the Office of Finance, Management and Budget, and the Office of Trade, and he shall provide a budget for the approval of the National Assembly, and each minister shall provide a full report on all activities of their ministries to the National Assembly at the end of every fiscal year. Paragraph E, the Prime Minister may issue executive orders which direct executive officers or clarify regulation, statutory instruments subject to the proposals of the National Assembly to further existing laws. Paragraph F, he shall sign bill passed into the National Assembly into law as an act, or he can let the bill lie for 10 days, then it becomes law. Or he can veto the bill and send it back to the National Assembly, which requires a vote of 2/3 majority to pass and become law. Our current constitution, I'm going to make a commentary right now, okay, before I go forward. Our current constitution does not allow the Prime Minister to sign any law into existence. It provides for the executive member of cabinet, or I would say the executive members of cabinet, to propose laws to the House, and the House, by virtue of discussing those laws and voting on those laws, then takes those laws, get the ascension of the Governor General, who are sent to making laws. Of course, as we have read last presentation, the Prime Minister would then be the head of state, and there would be no need for a Governor General according to them. So therefore, the Prime Minister, not as Prime Minister, but as head of state, or most to say, the president of a future Republic of Belize, as president and head of state, would then assent to the laws, not as Prime Minister. See, but they're not explaining that to the general public. They don't want you to get wise to that reality. They don't want you to catch on to what is it that they're trying to do. They're only trying to get it done, and later on you might be able to figure it out if you're so inclined. Otherwise, you just move on, and it is what it is at the point in time when somebody bring it to your attention to tell you, well, or to let you know this is how it really is, as compared to my trying to tell you right now how it's proposed to be based on their own documentation. Okay, it's right here in black and white. This is their proposal. The Prime Minister shall sign bills passed in the National Assembly, which is to say, in lieu of a Governor General, which we currently have, who is the one that signs bill passed in the legislature. It will be the Prime Minister that will grab that power and exercise that power. That's the end of part of that particular recommendation number 65. There are parts of the Constitution that I could have read, but more than reading those, I was actually just interjecting it when I made mention that there are certain things in the Constitution or certain parts of the Constitution that empower these guys to make the laws, but don't empower them or give them any permission to make those laws become lawful without the ascension of powers. But no, they want to make those laws become powerful, become laws just by virtue of them voting for it and the Prime Minister signing it off. Call the man president, call him what you're really trying to make him be. The president of the republic that you're trying to convert the country into. Tell the people what you're after. Stop playing fast and loose. Stop bamboozling the process. Be honest enough, contrite and forthright enough, and have faith in the people to follow your leadership. Don't try to con them and trap them into a situation that after the fact they may say, well, that's not what they had agreed to, when in fact that's what you're trying to get them to agree to. Well, I wasn't too sure, but I think I'm going to go ahead and do it. Recommendation number 65 reads as follows. Instead of my having a commentary on it, I might as well go ahead and read it, and I'm going to do that. It's recommendation number 65 says qualifications and disqualifications of prime ministers and ministers. Now, this is going to be, I presume, a bit lengthy, no? Yeah. But let's deal with some of it for context. It says, No person shall be qualified to be elected or continue to be elected as Prime Minister or Deputy Prime Minister who, as in the case of paragraph A, for example, I'm not going to read it yet, I'm going to make a quick commentary. No person shall be qualified to be elected or continue to be elected as Prime Minister. How many more times do I have to say it before these people really get it? We're not going to be electing a Prime Minister in a general election. We're going to be electing a head of state in a general election. Let's call it what it is. And that head of state will not be a Prime Minister. That head of state will be a president who will act in lieu of and or in place of the Governor General. Because we will not have any head of state such as the foreign head of state, which is currently the King of England. Tell the people that we want to have what you're actually proposing here without mincing words. Tell them in plain language. We want to go to a state of governance where we will not have a prime minister anymore who depends on the ascension of the head of state or the governor general on behalf of the head of state. We want our people to elect our own head of state. We want a locally elected head of state. There shouldn't be anything wrong with telling the people that that's what you want to do, or that's what you're trying to force the Constitution to say. And you don't have to go around the block a million times before you get to the point of telling them this is what you're after from the very beginning. And that you don't have to go and change the whole Constitution and put this in there without the people being aware that, this is what you're after from the very beginning. Forget about all the other hula baloo and all the other extra stuff that you're trying to distract people with, and come to them with the direct proposition. People aren't stupid, nor are they disinterested. For all you know, they would probably tell you yes. But you have to come as a plebiscite first, as the Constitution requires. A referendum, so that the people are consulted and they can say yea or nay. You can't just run around the country to consult with your friends and relatives. And if they are in agreement with you, then you will say, well, you consulted the people. That's not how you consult the people, by going and having consultation with your friends and relatives and your wife in a bed. That's not national political consultation. When you're dealing with national issues or national affairs, you're dealing with the affairs of the whole country, whether they voted for you or not. I would like to proceed here by reading paragraph A. Before I read paragraph A, let me just reread or do it over again, right? And I'll take another stab at what I just read before. It says, no person shall be qualified to be elected or continue to be elected as a prime minister or a deputy prime minister who, as in the case of paragraph A, is, by virtue of his own act, under any acknowledgement of allegiance, obedience, or adherence to a foreign power or state, international organizations, or community. This specific paragraph here is a sleight of hand, and I'll explain it to you. Do you know that currently, in fact, I'll give you an example. I'll not just get into a hypothetical. I'll give you a specific example right now for those of you who are interested. Didn't the Prime Minister just got called in for consultations with the new ambassador or charge d'affaires? After which, quickly, Mr. Maya was demitted from office. No, I said it like that, right? Mr. Maya was demitted from office. There's legal reasons and technical reasons why paraphrase like that. I could have said it in many other ways. And I'm not just trying to be funny why I say it like that. Because as of right now, I may know the reasons why Mr. Maya was sacked. But according to the Prime Minister, because he has not divulged it, it is not public knowledge and therefore nobody else should know. And he's not willing to speak to the matter. Neither does the ambassador is willing to speak to the matter. They will tell us about all kind of other stuff, such as drug running and all kind of other things, but they can't speak to the matter of suborning the powers of our country. Hello? Did anybody heard what I just said? Let me repeat it for clearer emphasis. Suborning the powers of the governance of our country to foreign powers. That's what this paragraph A is intimating against. That is that anybody who is potentially capable of suborning all governance powers should not continue to be a prime minister or be elected as a prime minister. This is what they're proposing here. And it's the very same thing that they're doing. Do you understand now why is it that I call them a bunch of jackals? At least I hope that you understood what I was saying just now. Because I don't think I'm talking above the average person's head. There might be a few people who maybe, because of lack of context, they don't know they have not been following our program enough and learned enough or know enough to understand the subtleties of these legal matters, as well as the esoterics of the geopolitics and the economic consequences. You know, there's a whole lot of different things come into play. And if we don't born knowing what we need to learn, hell, man, we got to learn it. Find a way to learn it. You're not born knowing what you need to learn. Be patient. Spend your time and effort. Commit yourself to learning about the things that you need to know. Because ignorance is not going to safeguard you. Believe me. A lot of people who are ignorant went to their grave ignorant and ended up in their grave because of ignorance. Their ignorance did not stop them from ending up. Sometimes, maybe in some cases, they probably could have lived a little longer, but maybe, who's to tell? Maybe that was their time. So, that was just a circumstance under which they had to leave. But when you don't know that a car is coming around the corner and you run around the corner and cross the street and that car knock you down and kill you, you can't say, well, if you may only know, you wouldn't have run around the corner and you would have taken caution and approached the corner a little bit more cautiously, and then you wouldn't have gotten knocked down. Ignorance of certain circumstances may not preclude your demise. You'll still end up being, unlived. I mean, I'm being funny when I say it like that, eh? Because that's not the new term, right? They don't say being killed, or say uh, um, getting killed, or being dead. They call it unlive now, right? A new um, social parlance. But at the end of the day, Belizean people at home and abroad, I hope you get the gist of what I'm trying to say. I could say it in a lot of other different ways, right? But we don't have the time for it. We only have 90 minutes, 1.5 hours for each of our program. And during the course of each of those programs, part of that 1.5 hour is taken up for the preliminaries, such as our prayer and our reading, and sometimes public announcements and bantering. Sometimes we just can't go hardcore all the time because it will be a miserable life. But in general, what I'm saying, beware of these people come bearing gifts to you, especially when they think that you don't know what is it that they're after. When they think that they have a clear shot at bamboozling you, they will do it. Okay? So why would then this particular group, who was paid millions of dollars to put this crop together, money that could have gone into poverty alleviation programs in the country, or scholarships, or or medical, buy some more gauze or some more um, uh, um, what they call it, Kuwait or whatever, help the hospital with some of the supplies that they need. Instead of undertaking this kind of crazy stuff here, and at the end of the day, end up being so onerous to the point where they are afraid to let the people know what the hell they were doing in the first place and what is it that they want to get done. And they're dancing around, tiptoeing, and trying to figure out all kind of backhanded ways to bring this nonsense about. I'm not the only person that sees what's going on, nor am I the only person that's talking about what's going on. But I'm just glad to have the privilege to participate in the process and add my little 1 cent or 2 cents to the discourse. I'll go on to read paragraph B. Yeah, we still have another 32 minutes to go. So I think we're on good track for tonight. Let me go ahead and read paragraph B. It's not too long, probably about 20 words at the most. Paragraph B reads as follows. Another way in which a person can be disqualified from being elected duly as Prime Minister. It says, has dual nationality or possesses more than one passport of different states. Now, this particular paragraph B has been put in there to exclude people like myself, for example. Or, well, I don't have dual nationality. Okay? But there are others who do. In other words, they want the people Belizeans who travel from their home country, go abroad and work abroad and break their back making money to send back for their family and to take care of the economics or help the economy of the country. They want you to spend your life slaving for them. But you should have no right to speak to and or participate in any other political affairs of the country. Just sponsor it. Just provide the funds to sponsor it. See the hell out of what's going on. First of all, they say that because you leave and go abroad and go to work to make the money that you can't make at home or haven't made at home, that's as good as it gets for you. So if you have to have dual citizenship by having a Belizean citizenship and taking another citizenship from the country abroad that's affording you the privilege to make the living so that you could help your country, then you are good enough to make the money and send it back. But don't tell us how to run things around here, basically. That's for all intents and purposes. That's what it's all, what this section, paragraph B, is telling you. Whereas the Constitution of Belize says that you're entitled to have dual citizenship. and nobody can take away your original birthplace citizenship. So if you as a Belizean, whether you're any part of the world, have a single Belizean citizenship or a dual citizenship from other, one other secondary country to which you have some allegiance or operations with, so long as that country is willing to put up with you, tolerate you, or accept you as a dual citizen, nobody in Belize, according to our constitution, has the authority, the power, the rights to classify you as non-Belizean and or to derogate or take away your basic rights that is accrued and that all Belizeans are entitled to. As in section 6 of the Constitution, it says all not all. It says everyone is equal under the law. And there's a reason why I didn't say all, because that's not what it says. It says everyone. And when it says everyone, it's implying not only just all Belizeans, whether at home or abroad, it's referring to all human beings, all people, all human beings that exist in Belize, whether they are Belizean by birth, Belizean by nationality, or just residents, whether legal or illegal, or whatever the circumstance. So long as you are within the boundaries of the country named Belize, you're equal under law. The Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land, protects you and your rights, protects your basic civil rights, it protects your human rights, it protects your international rights, But these jackals, they want to change all of those laws that protect rights under the Constitution. They want to eviscerate them. That's why they come to you and say that they can make all these variations of laws for emergency purposes and transgress people's fundamental rights. When the Constitution says that no government entity or authority has that power to transgress any of those rights. So now that we have been telling them that over and over, and they're losing the case to them over and over, now they want to turn around and change the whole damn Constitution in order to have another document that is more pliable to what they're trying to do and which does not stop them from doing what they're trying to do. Bunch of jackals. But anyhow, I think they're enough responding on paragraph B. Let me go to paragraph C. It doesn't look like paragraph C is too long anyhow. Paragraph C is very short, probably about 20 words or less. So I'll just read that and get out of that so we can go a little farther into the process. Paragraph C reads as follows. Another way that someone can be disqualified from being able to run for the Prime Minister. Let me make another commentary quickly. If you are a Belizean, the Constitution of Belize says that no government entity has the ability to or rights or power vested in it to take away your Belizean citizenship or to derogate that Belizean citizenship. You as an individual is the only entity on the face of this earth who can give up your citizenship. Don't care what part of the world you are, you're still a Belizean, unless you want to give that up. Nobody can take that away from you. Who can tell you that you have lost it by virtue or forfeited it, by virtue of any rules that they put into place, because they have no authority or power to create any such rule. Any such rule is a contravention of the Constitution and is null and void. That's according to Section 2 of the Constitution. The Constitution is the supreme law of Belize, and if any other law which is inconsistent with it, whether that law is a law that the legislator they make or that the Prime Minister they make for departmental management purposes, or the police department makes, or any one of them that make a law that is contravening of the Constitution, to the extent of that contravention, it is null and void. And we keep repeating those over and over because we want people to understand that that is the case. The fact that these guys want to run roughshod over us doesn't mean that we should sit idle by and pretend that, well, they have the authority to do what they don't have the authority to do. I'll read section C. Is an undischarged bankrupt. That is, that if a person is a bankrupt person, they cannot run to become the prime minister. Of course, that's the case as it is right now. If you're a bankrupt person, you cannot run to be a member of the House of Representatives, and you have to be a member of the House of Representatives, commanding a majority of the members there in order to be selected to become the prime minister. So that's already in the system. They're putting it here as if it's something that they just invented, like, they just invented sliced bread. So now they're notifying you that sliced bread has been invented by them. A bunch of bamboozlers. Having been adjudged or otherwise declared bankrupt under any law in force in any part of the world, which is wrong, because the Constitution of Belize does not apply to the whole world. Neither does the Constitution of other countries apply to Belize. So that's a conflation right there, and it's a deliberate, intended mischief making, to conflate those two scenarios. The law of Belize is not the law of the United States. The law of the United States is not the law of Belize. The law of Guatemala is not the same as Belize. The law of Mexico is not the same as Guatemala. Every country have their own laws. They may have treaties and agreements among themselves in terms of recognizing on or accepting certain legal or practice between them. But there are differences in the laws of each country, each independent country. That is the basis of what they call independence. They have the right and the authority vested in them as a sovereign country to dictate what their laws are. And or if they make treaties, neighborly treaties or international treaties, then their laws can be subjected to international laws. Let me just skip the rest of that and avoid any further commentary. There is another paragraph D, which has about less than 20 words. I'll just read it. It says, this is another way of being disqualified from running for the future the future prime minister of Belize. This is something that they are proposing. It's not the law as it currently is in our constitution. It's something that they're trying to interject. Okay, so paragraph D reads as follows: has served a sentence of 1 year or more in prison in any part of the world. Again, that's another conflation. What they're trying to do there, for example, and I'll explain it to you quickly, if you'll permit me, is in the case of Mr. Shine Barrow, right? Who was an adjudged criminal according to American laws. It means then that the Belizean law, after it is revised, will not say the way it is said now. It will be saying what they're proposing here. That is that any part of the world you are convicted of a crime, It's the same as if you were convicted in Belize of that same crime, or you're supposed to suffer the same penalty. That is that if you had committed that same crime in Belize under the laws of the country, this preclusion would have held muster in terms of the constitutionality of it, even though it could have been challenged also by other sections of the existing constitution that has precedence over these proposals. As a matter of fact, none of these proposals is law. But even if they were to vote for these things to make them law, that doesn't mean that they're lawful or that they're legal or that they're constitutional, by the way. It just means that they made a vote in regards to certain stipulated statements, and they're hoping that the authorities that determine what is legal, constitutional, or lawful, that is the court, would back them up. Because the court could just strike that down and say, well, no, it's null and void, according to Section 2 of the Constitution. It's in violation of Section 3, Section 4, Section 5, or any of the other sections of the existing Constitution, and therefore it's null and void. You only have one Constitution at a time, and anything that is in contravention of that Constitution is unlawful, it's illegal, it's unconstitutional, and it's void. I'm saying the same thing probably 2 or 3 or 4 different ways, but that's what it amounts to. There's no getting away from it. Let me move on to paragraph E. It says another way for disqualifying a person from being able to run for the prime ministership is serving in the National Assembly or as an officer involved in the conduct of elections. The prime minister cannot be a prime minister, according to them, if he is serving in the National Assembly. I'm going to laugh at this one. Do we not currently have Prime Minister Mr. John Briceño, who is the leader of government business in the Assembly? Hello? Or are we to say that what these people are proposing here is to change the Assembly from operating the way the Assembly currently operates? That is that the Prime Minister and or the other ministers of government will not be available to the House of Representatives as members who can be asked questions and who have to answer those questions according to the procedures of the Assembly. The standing orders of the Assembly currently in place dictates that the Prime Minister and the Minister of Government Portfolios, the Minister of different government departments, for example, sit in the Assembly. I'm not saying that they can't prohibit them from being there, but how do they get to become ministers in the first place? They become elected from that body. That is the body that from which they get the authority vested in them to become lawmakers, as well as to become the individuals who are entrusted with the accountability for government affairs and government departments. So, okay, let's take it as far as they're pretending to want to take this. The Prime Minister does not get sworn in as Prime Minister. He does not become elected in the House of Representatives. You just take some arbitrary person off the street, someone of good repute in the community, and just tag him or her as the new Prime Minister under the new system that they're trying to set up here, right? Is that what they're intimating? If most Belizeans believe that that's what they're intimating here, most Belizeans wouldn't go for it. They want someone that is accountable to the voters. I'm tempted to believe that we're going through this exercise. I'm exposing these things, contextualizing them with the reality, and showing how some of these proposals are preposterous. On their face, it doesn't make sense. Like some people will say back home in Belize, make it make sense. How the devils are going to have the election for the general election to gain the majority of the seats in the House, under which you then have the rights to constitute the government? How are you going to make it any better now by saying that the Prime Minister cannot be a member of Parliament or should not be a member of Parliament? For all intents and purposes, you're changing the basis of the system of governance. In France, for example, the Prime Minister in France is chosen by the French president from someone in the House of Representatives or in the someone in the House of Representatives that commands the majority of the people in the House, and that's the person that the French Prime Minister, not Prime Minister, the French President as head of state, choose to be his Prime Minister. The same thing like in Belize. The person who wins the most seats, who could control the most seats in the House, goes to the Governor General, who acts on behalf of the head of state, and assent to that leader of the majority of people in the House to let that person be the Prime Minister. Otherwise, you could just, like I intimated earlier, take somebody from off the street and make them be Prime Minister. The only thing you have to do then is put some qualifications for the level of minimum requirements they'll have to have in order for you to just grab them and put them and let them serve as the Prime Minister. But is that going to be any better than what we currently have? Would be my question. You're making proposals. Your proposals are intended or intimating changes, but are those changes for the better? Or you're just running a circle show? Let me go ahead and read F, paragraph F, under the same series or category. A person cannot run for the office of the Prime Minister if he or she has served in any of the armed forces of Belize 10 years immediately before his nomination, or to any class of persons that is compromised in such force. Okay. So let's say somebody leaves the BDF or the Coast Guard or the police department and they want to run for politics. They have to wait 10 years and hope that within that 10 years they have acquired enough control of one of the mass party that then they can apply to run for Prime Minister. In other words, the people who are in politics right now will not have any true contestant to them other from among themselves currently, at least for the next 10 years. uh, you call it a sleight of hand or a deliberate, you know, seizing of powers. That's how I would put it. You don't want no competitors. Just disqualify everybody else so that you be the only survivor. It's an autocratic mindset. F, for example, has served in uh, no, I just read that. I just read that. Let me read G. Man, and there's a whole lot more. I don't know if I really want to. Okay, let's go ahead and read G. 21, 20. Oh man, that means I'm not going to do much. But okay, I'll go ahead and read G, which is less than 30 words. It says, has served in any security or law enforcement body 10 years immediately before his nomination. That's kind of onerous. That's not fair, or but it's another one of their recommendations. And I'm saying to you, what they're recommending and proposing here, a lot of it does not up. But as I'm reading it, it should become manifestly clear to you that what I was saying, that it does not up, is true. It doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. For example, a person like Mr. Chester Williams right now, after all the experience that he have acquired being the former um, commissioner of police, are you going to tell me that that man has to wait 10 years before he can run for political office and become prime minister, even if he wins? So you're excluding him from being able to do what you are currently doing. That is that you have a young politician just started his career. I forgot the gentleman's name. In college division, he just ran and beat the previous elected politician there that was there for 20 odd years. And he, as a novice now, has earned his chance, you know, to be classified and have the rights as any other winners of a Belize political division. If his party decide that they want him to be their prime minister, it means that based on what is written here, he would be disqualified if this was to come into law. That's untenable. So whoever put this particular piece of the recommendation forward is not being honest, or is being unreasonable and unfair. Okay? Are you going to tell me right now that only the senior members of the party, those who have 30 years or more, would then be qualified to run the government, or be eligible to become prime minister? You become eligible for prime minister so long as you get the votes and win the divisions, and the members of your party agree for you to be their leader. You can't then go and make a law like this one, for example, and reverse all of those fundamentals. You're acting extrajudicial or extra constitutional. Let me. I think there's like 2 or 3 more of them that I need to read, and that should probably help us to close out for the rest of the evening, even turn the stuff sideways. H. Paragraph H reads as follows. A person is not qualified to run to become prime minister if he is a party to, or a partner in a firm, or a director or manager of a company which is a party to any contract with the government for or on account of the public service. This is a tricky one because we do have a current prime minister, and I'll explain to you why I'm bringing him up again in this particular context, who would be in violation of this specific recommendation here, or this paragraph G, paragraph G, no, paragraph H. The current prime minister, Mr. John Belizean, he took away some government contracts from our government telephone company and gave it to his own family's company, when in fact the government could have been benefiting from getting those services from our own government company, so we can keep the money in our own treasury. But instead, now we have to take that money out of the treasury and pay his family for their services, which we were getting for free before. Isn't that onerous? So now you're saying that the Constitution says that currently nobody's supposed to be enriching themselves and or their family or family members or whatever at the government trial. And yet we have a prime minister that has been doing that. Now he comes again after taking that first dip and was not challenged, at least challenged enough. He was not ordered by the court to reverse course and to not be in violation, of the ethics of government services. But now he's turning around and taking our public company and the assets of our public company to go and buy his previous company, to which he had given the government contracts, taken away the government contracts and given it to his company. Now he wants to come around and buy back his company with public money, because he's the prime minister. He will determine that, okay, well, he will finance that venture on our behalf, on behalf of the public, to enrich himself and his family. That's another crime. And when I say that these, well, besides that, he says he doesn't know anything about it, and he is not the one to be consulted in regards to any of those dealings. He is the prime minister and the minister of finance. He is the person that's going to cut the check to transfer the funds. And he has to negotiate the prices. He has to agree with prices or not. So when he's coming in public on the airwaves, in interviews, and talking stupid, is that he doesn't know and he's a businessman. How the hell he won't be in charge of our business and don't know what's going on in his own office? Is he crazy or just pretending senility? I think all of us are a bunch of idiots out here. But they get offended when I say they're a bunch of kleptocrats. They don't abide by the Constitution, for which I call them scofflaws. They dip their finger into our public treasury and mismanage and misspend our resources, and then turn around and say that they don't know what's going on. He doesn't know about the illegal contracts that are being given out from his own office. What the hell are we paying him for then, to sit in that office? The buck stopped with him. Every time he gets caught with his finger in the cookie jar, he claims ignorance. Let me get off the stump and just try and finish up this thing, because I'm at the point where I got 2 minutes left, and I got two more to do. The shortest one I'll get rid of quickly, just in case I run out of time, and that is J. J is about 1, 2, 3, less than 10 words, and I is about 50 plus words. So I'll just get rid of J, like I said, and it says, has been impeached, subject to impeachment proceedings. Now, I don't know that anybody in our country have been impeached or would be allowed to be impeached. The governance system that we have should allow for it to happen, but the governance practices that we have endured will never allow it to happen. So I'll just dispense with that one quickly by making that particular stipulation and let that rest. It's a proposal, but it's a proposal that doesn't, it's not worth the ink that is used to write it on the paper. So I'll go back to the last one in that category, under 65, and that is I. So it says, has not declared publicly and in a newspaper circulating. Oh, shit, sorry. Holy Toledo. Man, I touched the screen and the stuff disappeared. Oh, man. Yeah, every once in a while that happens. These things are very sensitive. Touch it in the wrong way or in the wrong order while I was turning at the same time. Okay, no, it's too far. Okay, I was just about the end there just now. I don't know if it would have made that much of a difference. 58. Okay, I think I'm close enough to it. Let me just go ahead and so I could say at least we had finished it. Okay. Yeah. Okay. No, no, go a little further. Yeah, this is it right here. Okay. Sorry for babbling in your ears again, and I had lost the material, so now I'm just trying to size it up so I can read it properly. He or she, as a potential candidate for prime minister, can be disqualified if he or she has not declared publicly and in a newspaper circulating a notice nationwide setting out the nature of the contract held by members of his immediate family with the government, such as what I just described just now that he had done in regards to taking away the government contracts from our government telephone company and give it to his own private family company for them to make the money that should have stayed in our coffers. We have to come up with extra tax money now to pay for those very same services. Very onerous. And then turn around and want to have our government company buy his family's company for an exaggerated price. Why? Because the industry needs infusion of capital to stay current, and they don't want to spend that extra capital, so they want to sell it off now to us so that they can get paid off and paid out ahead of time. If that's not kleptocracy, I don't know what is. And that is only a part, like I say, of all the dozens of other kleptocratic actions and behaviors and things that has happened under the nose of this same prime minister from within his own Department of Finance. It says of his immediate family with the government of Belize, or the intent of any such firm or company therein. He says his brother owned his company. It used to be his company, and then once he became prime minister, his brother started being the boss, right? Because initially, Mr. Ashcroft, which is one of the financiers of politics and politicians in Belize, who is one of the money movers and shakers in our country, He placed bets on both sides. Whoever wins the election, he's in good stead with them. So he was in cahoot with Mr. Briceño, or current Prime Minister was in cahoot with Mr. Ashcroft. And Mr. Ashcroft ended up getting 50-odd% of the Briceño family's company. And the Briceño administration had supposedly settled all accounts with Mr. Ashcroft, only for us to see the man showing up now, waiting in the wings to benefit from Mr. Briceño's family selling their company to the government for overprice. And the person that's going to get the biggest part of that money is Mr. Ashcroft. Once again, as usual, go back and check the trajectory of all the dealings that that gentleman had with our country. At every step of the way, he's always getting ahead of us by millions and sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars. That's why they can't find money to manage the government and to pay the teachers and do all the things that they need to do. They have to be stiffing the stevedores and stiffing the teachers and stiffing the civil servants and the pensioners and everybody else. Because they give away the money to these billionaires and these rich people that give them a little kickback for political campaign. I'll let that be my last word for tonight. I went beyond our time, at least by 5-6 minutes or so, almost 7 minutes now. And I'll just let that be the end of tonight's program. And I'd like to say we'll take up some more of these matters as soon as we get another opportunity to do so, because as I said, we were delinquent a little while in not trying to finish up the whole thing, and it's going to take some time, and we just got to live with the situation. And there are times when there are other pressing issues going on in the country that we have to pay attention to and or make our programs around. And so sometimes we got to push these things aside, and go back to it. And I'm just getting a chance to go back to it currently. For tonight, I would just like to say thank you very much for those of you who have tuned into our live program tonight. And those who are going to be listening to our program over the weekend and your own timing. And please hang with us on this particular endeavor. No one is paying us to get it done. There are no millions of dollars coming out of the government coffers like what they did to pay for their bogus education campaign. But we think that it is necessary for us to indulge in this process, finance it on our own, provide the educational process, produce the effort, and hope that somehow or another it will worth your valuable time for you to listen to our presentation and probably, hopefully as well, benefit positively as a positive public benefit from the effort. Again, this was the Belizean Affairs show number 380, and I was your chairman for the night, Leonard Brackett, and we'd just like to invite you back on Monday when we'll have hopefully available some of our other panelists and a different chairman presenting a different program. As for tonight, we'll just say thank you very much for your time spared, and God bless Belize and Belizeans at home and abroad. Good night.